Hello everybody and welcome back to our pose foundation and variation series. Today we are going into a downward facing dog, and this is a very common pose that we get all messed up in. So today I have a blanket and some blocks, and we'll be going over some variations that you can incorporate into your practice. So go ahead and grab whatever you would like to use, and I'll meet you back here. So downward facing dog can be a tricky one, especially when you're just starting yoga. So downward facing dog, like many yoga poses, is to lengthen our spine. And I feel like so many people really focus on straightening your legs. It's like a forward fold. You want your legs as straight as possible and you're hyperextending backwards, and it feels terrible. In our downward facing dog today, we are going to focus on lengthening our spine and finding ease through our knees. Kind of rhymes. So in our downward facing dog, let's build from the ground up. So if you are new to yoga and say downward facing dog is not comfortable for you, or you maybe have a hard time breathing in downward facing dog and it just doesn't feel great, I have a variation for you. So again, like I said in the child's pose one, you can leave your blanket pretty much on your mat. So we're going to start off in a tabletop position, and this is great for anybody who has some wrist issues and you don't really like weight in your wrist, or downward facing dog just isn't your pose. So you can actually take a tabletop. This is absolutely fine for a downward facing dog. There's nothing wrong with this. And this will kind of help you just feel relaxed. Your chest is lifted so you're not actually bent down gazing in between your legs here. So you can focus more on your breath and really lessen the stress in your wrists. Now, if this absolutely does hurt your wrist, you can make fists, come up onto your fists. So this is option 2 in your tabletop, and bring your hands right underneath your shoulders here. So you have this one long straight line and your bones are all stacked up, so you're not really putting an odd amount of pressure if your hands are reaching out in front of you. So bring them right underneath your shoulders. Now, if fists don't work and it's just maybe this 90-degree angle in your wrist or your arm here that doesn't feel good, just walk your hands out. This is great. This is perfect. This will lessen the load right there and the angle in your wrist and in your arm. Now you can take this a little bit further if you do want that spinal lengthening. Maybe walk your hands out a little bit more, and we're going to work on the chest opener. Let's inhale, shift our weight forward, exhale, press our hips up towards the sky. So my hips are right over my knees, hopefully. And we're going to bring our chest down towards the floor. We can take our gaze right in between our knees here. This is a perfect downward facing dog if you're really working on it and strengthening in your shoulders, in your wrists, and just kind of overall getting comfortable with the pose. Because downward facing dog is an inversion, so it can be quite daunting for the first couple times. So again, always welcome to come into a tabletop or even this extended puppy pose, reaching your hips up, opening your chest, and let's pull our shoulder blades down our back. Fingertips are spread wide. Now, before we get into the full downward facing dog, I want to talk about our hands real quick. So, a lot of the traditional cues say spread your fingertips as wide as you can and, really hug everything in, and your hands should be shoulder width distance, and your fingertips should be, your fingers should be pointing forward, and like all this crazy stuff. You don't have to do that. So with your hands, the only thing that I ask of you is to make sure you're not cupping. So making this cupping action with your hands. You want to put your hands completely onto the mat, so you're pressing through all your fingers, knuckles, and palms, and not just dumping all of your upper body weight into your wrists, because that's going to cause some issues later on. You can take your hands out as wide as your mat. You can point your fingers in a certain direction. I sometimes like to hang my pinkies off the mat and then point my thumbs forward. I think because I have really tight shoulders, you can have your hands in here, maybe fingertips face forward. You can have your hands turned out towards the side. So it's really whatever you feel in your hands and what's going to make your shoulders feel good. So coming up to our traditional downward facing dog, we would come up from a tabletop most likely and tuck our toes. And if you're in this tabletop position, sometimes teachers are like, okay, now go into your down dog, but then your down dog from your tabletop's like 2 feet wide. So that doesn't feel good. So from your tabletop position, walk your hands 1 palm's length or 1 hand's length in front of you. So you're kind of in this extended tabletop that we just were working on. Let's tuck our toes, readjust your hands to where you would like to work on them. Take a deep inhale, and then exhale, press through your hands and toes, lifting your knees up away from the earth. A lot of times we like to shift our weight forward and round our back. This is a common thing, especially when we're starting yoga. And you know, if you're not practicing with mirrors, this can feel all right. But we really want to work on sending our hips high to the sky and lengthening through our spine. So in our downward facing dog, you'll see many people in class going like this and really trying to glue their heels down to the earth, and their lower back is super rounded and their tailbone is tucking under. Now, I'm not saying that you should go and look around in your yoga class, but as a teacher, I noticed it. So we're gonna take our feet hip width distance. You can even take them wider if you'd like, if that feels better, so you have a bigger foundation here. And we're gonna bend our knees a lot, like a lot. It might feel ridiculous at first, but then it feels a lot better through your spine, and you can send your hips higher, and your chest is gonna be reaching back towards your thighs. Lift your heels up off the earth. Don't glue them to the mat. It's not helping anybody. I don't even keep my heels on the mat anymore. And that's not the goal here. The goal is to lengthen through your spine. So you can always readjust your feet. You can always readjust your hands. You're not glued to your mat. And we just need to remember to breathe. Coming back to our foundation. Again, the only thing I'm asking you is to make sure that your hands aren't cupped. And for your feet, let's just make sure that all 10 toes are facing forward. And you can no longer see your heels because they're hiding behind your ankles. So we don't really want our toes splayed out to the side and our knees all bent. We want everything straight forward and our hips are squared towards the earth. All right? Now say that downward facing dog doesn't feel good on your chest because it is an inversion here. We can take these blocks. Again, if you're in a studio or at home, you can always use books as well for your blocks. Take your blocks out as wide as you like your hands. And coming back into our tabletop, you can work here. Knees are hip width distance. And you can come into this pose. You might need to adjust. So we want our hips over our knees. Hands are lifted onto the blocks here. This will keep your chest a little bit more lifted. Now, you can also do this in the full downward facing dog. I don't really like it, but some people do. So we're gonna tuck our toes here. My hands are firmly planted onto my blocks, and I'm gonna lift my knees, sending my hips high to the sky. Now again, this is really easy. You can glue your heels down to the earth. But again, look at my low back. And then when I bend my knees and send my hips higher, my spine lengthens. So this is my heels glued, relaxing my knees. Feels much better, especially down your hamstrings if you have tight hamstrings. Now with my hands underneath the block, this will keep my chest lifted as well. So I'm not quite dumping everything forward into my chest. And we want to evenly distribute our weight wherever we are in whatever variation of our downward facing dog. We want to evenly distribute our weight through our hands and our feet, so we're not just dumping a load of weight into our wrist. And that's where a lot of wrist pain comes in. If you feel like in your shoulders you're getting really crunched up or maybe stressed out through your shoulders or your wrists, it might be because we're rounding and pressing all of our weight into our hands. See that 90-degree angle? We want a long spine, long arms. See, I don't have that 90-degree angle on my wrists. Knees are bent, heels are lifted. So, whatever variation you would like, go ahead and take it in class. If your teacher tells you otherwise, that you shouldn't do that variation, that's not their practice. So you do whatever you would like. And again, as always, these variations are on the blog at tatemarieyoga.com. If you haven't already, please consider to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. If you have a favorite variation, something I missed, or something that you would like to see, please leave me a comment, leave a suggestion or a comment below, and I will get back to you as fast as I can. As always, it's an honor to move with you, and I'll see you next time. Namaste.